31 years ago, the Queen vocalist died of bronchopneumonia resulting from HIV, just 24 hours after revealing to the world that he had AIDS. The artist's unmistakable voice, peculiar mustache, and tight pants remain in everyone's memory. Freddie Mercury was born on September 5th, 1946 in Zanzibar, a small island off the east coast of Africa that is now part of Tanzania, but for years belonged to the British Empire. His birth name was Farrokh Bulsara, the son of an Indian family, followers of the Zoroastrian religion. They lived in the island because of his father's job as a colonial officer. At the age of 7, he was sent to the St. Peter boarding school in India, where his musical talents were revealed and where he participated in his first group, the Hectics. At the time, the Shy Bucky, as he was called because he had extra teeth that caused his buck-tooth grin, something that traumatized him for life. Started playing the violin and singing in the high school choir, where his piano teacher saw his innate talent and recommended to his parents that he had private lessons. Freddie also had a natural gift for sports, including athletics, hockey, and boxing. In 1963, after returning to Zanzibar, Freddie's family had to flee to England because of the revolution that led to the emancipation of that region. They settled in Feltham, a suburb of London. The family left behind a comfortable life and became part of the working class. It was there that Farrokh Bulsara disappeared and Freddie Mercury was born. The name Freddie he got during his high school days, while Mercury is a name with many different interpretations. Some can remember the chemical element or the messenger of the gods in Greek mythology. On one occasion, Freddie said that he was referring to his mother, and that is probably the reason why he chose that name. At the end of the 1960s, two fundamental events took place in his personal and professional life. He met Mary Austin, the woman of his life, whom he called my wife without ever getting married, and to whom he left most of his fortune. He dedicated Love of My Life to her, a beautiful love song that is among the best in Queen's repertory. On the other hand, through Tim Staffel, he met the guitarist Brian May and the drummer Roger Taylor, the trio's Smile that would become Queen. Freddie Mercury, before adopting his stage name, did brief performances with groups such as Ibex. But in April 1970, he joined the group Smile as lead singer after Tim Staffel left, tired of the band's lack of success. Shortly afterwards, they met the bassist John Deacon, who completed the classic Queen lineup, which would remain unchanged for over 20 years. Soon after its inception, it was possible to see that Queen was a different band. Not to belittle the talent of other members, who wrote many of the band's classics, but Freddie was the leader who brought them to glory. It was his idea to name the band Queen, which at the time was a bad slang for a gay man. Graduated in graphic art, he was also responsible for creating the band's logo, known as Queen Crest. The emblem's concept is to unite the zodiac signs of all members of the group. 2 lions for John Deacon and Roger Taylor, Cancer for Brian May, and Virgo for Freddie. The Q and crown represent the band's name and a phoenix protecting everything. In the wake of the glam rock that was triumphing in the UK at the time, thanks to artists like David Bowie and Mark Bolan, Queen released their first 2 albums in the first half of the 70s, heavily influenced by progressive rock and hard rock from bands like Led Zeppelin. However, it would be with their 3rd album, Sheer Heart Attack, that they started to gain interest from the public, especially with songs like Now I'm Here and Killer Queen. However, the greatest success was yet to come. In 1975, they released A Night at the Opera, an album in which they reached #1 in the United Kingdom and Australia, and which had great repercussions around the world. Nonetheless, the single Bohemian Rhapsody was highly unusual for a popular single to play on radio. Almost 6 minutes long, the epic recording, which mixes ballads, rock, and opera, was different from everything at that time. Just recording the song took over 3 weeks, making A Night at the Opera one of the most expensive records at the time. The band released Bohemian Rhapsody with the recording of a short film in which they are seen performing the song and is considered the first music video in history. For the rest of the 1970s, the group released essential albums such as Date at the Races, 1976, News to the World, 1977, and Jazz, 1978, and other hits such as Somebody to Love, We Are the Champions, We Will Rock You, Bicycle Race, and Don't Stop Me Now.
Somebody, ooh, somebody, can anybody we are the champions, my friends. We will rock you. Don't stop me, 'cause I'm having a good
Despite the remarkable success, Queen had never been #1 in North America. But this mark was surpassed by Crazy Little Thing Called Love, composed by Freddie in honor to Elvis Presley, and released in 1979. Months later, the funky Another One Bites the Dust also reached the top of the charts, and made the album The Game from 1980 one of the best sellers of their career. The 80s brought a fresh look to Freddie Mercury, along with the classic mustache, so emblematic at the final phase of his career. The beginning of the decade was not that good, they had only small jobs. Besides that, the album Hot Space, 1982, strongly influenced by disco music, had only the song Under Pressure, made in collaboration with David Bowie, achieving relative success. The distance between the band members led Freddie to solo projects. He began to prepare his own solo album in 1983, for which he recorded 2 songs with Michael Jackson. The project was set aside, and the band returned to the studio to record The Works, 1984. The disc includes the song I Want to Break Free, in which music video the band appeared dressed as women, leading to MTV's censorship.
Another one bites the dust, and another one gone, and another one gone. Another one bites the dust. Under pressure, that brings a feeling down. To break free from your lies, you're so self-satisfied.
Queen returned to the road on a tour that featured their 2 shows at the first edition of Rock in Rio, in Rio de Janeiro, for more than 350,000 people, and their presence at Live Aid, which took place at the same time at Wembley Stadium in London and John F. Kennedy Stadium in Philadelphia on July 13, 1985. These shows meant a new beginning for the band members, who were going through a tough time in its internal relations. Shortly before, Freddie's first solo album had been released, with little repercussion, which convinced the singer that the best thing was to continue with his companions. In 1986, A Kind of Magic was released, which became another great success thanks to its title track and other songs like 1 Year of Love and Who Wants to Live Forever, which were part of the soundtrack of the movie Highlander. With the new compositions, the band started a brief European tour of around 20 shows. On August 9th, in front of more than 120,000 people, the group played the last show of the tour, and the last with its classic formation in Knebworth Park, North London. Mercury never wanted to have an in-depth discussion with the public about his sexuality. However, this rock icon was known to have dated both men and women. The singer grew up in an era where same-sex attraction was considered a mental disorder as well as a joke. Gay people were barely represented in the media, and the message society had to offer was that not being straight was unacceptable. Because of growing tolerance, many gay men felt pressured to hide their sexuality, including from their families. Freddie's parents practiced Zoroastrianism, a religion that saw being gay as a type of devil worship. Although he remained close to his family throughout his life, he never dared discuss his sexuality with them. In fact, his parents were told that a male companion who lived at Freddie's house in London was the gardener. As a young man, the rock star dated women, one of whom was Mary Austin, with whom he began a serious relationship in the 1970s. The two lived together for a few years, and were even engaged before Freddie revealed to her that he was bisexual. The two would maintain a close friendship after their split up, with Mary continuing to appear in public with him. He called her my wife, and left her most of his fortune in his will. During and after his relationship with Mary, Freddie dated men. Among them were the record executive David Mintz, the chef Joe Fanelli, and the hairstylist Jim Hutton, who was his last partner. However, the star had not completely given up on women. In the 1980s, his relationships included the German actress Barbara Valentin. Mercury also did not limit himself to steady relationships. While on the road in Queen's early days, Brian May, who shared hotel rooms with Mercury, saw his pen nape with female companions. In 2017, May told the Sunday Times, "It was fairly obvious when the visitors to Freddie's dressing room started to change from hot chicks to hot men. Freddie took big steps towards his more hedonistic side. There were years of excesses, nights of sex, and drugs. One of the most remembered moments was the party that the band organized in New Orleans in 1978 on the occasion of the world premiere of their album Jazz. More than 500 people attended the event, which took place at the Fairmont Hotel, and which is difficult to separate from what was reality and not, although it has remained as the most excessive party in rock history. In his concerts, he wore clothes that left social and gender norms behind. Among his clothing choices were ties, angel wing capes, tight shorts and leather suits that evoked a biker image so popular in gay clubs. Being a star allowed Freddie to push some boundaries, but he still lived in a time where being honest about his attraction to men could have limited not only his career, but the career of his bandmates as well. For someone who wanted his music to be heard and who was reluctant to turn fans away, being open about his sexuality was something to avoid. Mercury was able to use music to express himself, and he may have said more than he wanted to say. For some, Bohemian Rhapsody, a worldwide hit written by him, was an example of this. On the track, lyrics such as "Mama, I just killed a man" may be a reference to Freddie killing his straight self. Of course, the singer himself never confirmed this theory. The exact circumstances of how Freddie Mercury became infected with HIV are unknown. The virus was spreading and hit some population centers in the US and UK in the late 70s and early 80s, near the time he used to visit clubs and bars and have one-night stands. At the time, little was known about the disease other than its high mortality. Mercury himself knew people with HIV, and after showing some symptoms, his own infection was confirmed in April 1987. Even after he developed AIDS, he denied reports about his illness and being gay. He was more outspoken with his bandmates than his family. According to Brian May in the documentary Queen, Days of Our Lives, Mercury said, "You probably already know what I'm going to tell you. You know what I'm suffering from, but I don't want to talk about it. I just want to make music until the day I die." Freddie kept his illness a secret, showing an appearance of normality that contradicted his public appearances. He was always a musician who, in contrast to his behavior on stage, he had a dislike for interviews and any kind of public exposure in his private life. The signs were more than evident. The band did not make the promotional tour for the album The Miracle, 1989, and Queen's trip to receive the Brit Award for his contribution to British music on February 18, 1990, showed the vocalist with a bad physical appearance, extremely thin and pale. One of the reasons for Freddie's silence was the concern about how his public image and legacy would change with this revelation. It was not until November 23, 1991, that he made a statement that said, "Following enormous conjecture in the press, I wish to confirm that I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS. I felt it correct to keep this information private in order to protect the privacy of those around me. However, the time has now come for my friends and fans around the world to know the truth, and I hope everyone will join with me, my doctors, and all those worldwide in the fight against this terrible disease. My intimacy has always been something special, and I'm famous for giving few interviews. Please understand that this will continue to be the case." Freddie Mercury died 24 hours later at his home in Garden Lodge, London, from AIDS-related bronchopneumonia. He was 45 years old. 3 days later, his funeral was conducted by a Zoroastrian priest, the religion he was raised in, and his ashes were kept by his former partner Mary Austin, who has never revealed where they were scattered. Peter Freestone was Freddie Mercury's personal assistant for 12 years. He not only witnessed the artist in his heyday, but also in his final days. In an interview with BBC in 2016, Peter said that Freddie wanted people to listen to his music without thinking that he suffered from a fatal disease. That's one of the reasons he kept it to himself. Not even his family knew the details until the last year of his life. The band found out in 1990, I think. The singer's family and friends only discovered the truth when his immune system was already showing signs of collapse. In his last months, he had central venous catheter inserted into his body because he has been receiving IV medication 3 times a day. Instead of going to the hospital, Joe Fanelli and I learned how to give him medicine. We also became his nurses, said Peter, who added, he was never depressed by his condition. There was no point wasting time trying to figure it out how he got it, where, or when. In October 1989, doctors advised Peter to prepare, as the singer probably wouldn't be alive until Christmas. However, Mercury remained alive for another 2 years. During the last year, he didn't show the energy he used to have. As he continued to weaken, it became harder to pretend that everything was fine. He wanted to leave as much music as possible that Queen could work on after he retired, and so he left 4 complete tracks for the band. About the last time Freestone saw him, he said, "He was lying down and I just sat next to him and held his hand. He would fall asleep and wake up several times. I would just hold his hand to let him know there was someone with him and that he wasn't alone." One of the things he said to me, and it's one of those things that I'll think about for the rest of my life, was "thank you." I don't know if he said thank you for just being with him that night, or for all the 12 years before that. I don't know, and I never will. Queen's career without their charismatic lead singer seemed to have come to an end. However, the band is active to this day. In 1995, they released Made in Heaven, an album that included recordings composed by Freddie and finished by his bandmates. Later came collaborations with the singers Paul Rodgers and Adam Lambert, projects in which the bassist John Deacon did not participate. By revealing his HIV status, Freddie Mercury did a lot to change the outlook on AIDS. Months after his death, the world's rock elite gathered in London to put on a concert in his honor. This event made history for the impact it had on public perception of HIV. Freddie's death also increased interest in Queen. The song Bohemian Rhapsody reached #1 again, over 15 years after its release. In addition, the 2018 premiere of the film that tells Mercury's history was a worldwide success and roused the fascination for an incomparable musician with a vocal range for which he never received specific training and which no one has managed to match. For more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. There's a new video every week. Thank you so much, and until the next video.